Hello, my name is Brennan Adamczyk. I'm joined here by Andrew Koski, and we're going to be chatting about sustainability at the University of Oregon. So, brief agenda for our slides today. We're going to give you just a quick background to what sustainability has looked like at the University of Oregon over the last several years, talk about some campus observations we found, and then I'll turn it over to Andrew to talk about heating our campus, which has been a big focus in terms of carbon emissions. And then we'll talk about some next steps and our vision. So as a background, I'm a graduate student. I also went to the University of Oregon for my undergraduate degree. Andrew is an undergraduate student and is director of advocacy for our student government, the Associated Students in the University of Oregon. So we're both, involved on campus and really wanted to chat about sustainability at UL. So a little bit of a background. We're both student representatives on something called the Thermal Systems Task Force. This was convened back in 2022 as a result of student activism on our university's climate action plan, last updated in 2018, and then a lot of student activism since. The board is composed of students, faculty, and staff. We're two of the five student representatives on the board, but we really have spent the past 2 years engaging with student groups on campus, like a group called the Climate Justice League, which has rallied student organizations in the campus community to come to forums and speak out about these options. And Andrew worked with our student government, the ASUO, to pass a resolution in support of one of the options for heating our campus that we're going to talk about. So there's been a lot of student involvement in this process. But as a group, the two of us have sat on this task force, and together we've been charged with reviewing campus heating and recommending an approach for how we can cut emissions and proceed to our university president. So I wanted to share a couple observations from our campus before we dive into that heating aspect. One is our campus is very fortunate to have a really robust waste management system. It's called Zero Waste on campus, but we have our own campus waste management. They recycle well, they compost where they can. They have these bins all over campus, and they're very aggressive in a good way about educating folks what is and is not recyclable. It's a really positive aspect of life on campus. Another aspect is a photo of our power plant. We're fortunate enough to have our own power plant just north of our campus, across a main road. And that is really helpful when we talk a little bit more about heating our campus, because we're able to really control and we're autonomous when it comes to our energy. An opportunity for improvement. This is a photo, not one I took, but of one of our university's athletics planes. I believe this is a football plane. This is something that happens a lot, especially with the University of Oregon changing from the Pac-12 athletic conference to the Big Ten. There's a lot of flying that goes on, and it generates a lot of emissions for our campus. So definitely something that a lot of students don't love to see. And then lastly, this is a photo of Hendricks Hall, the hall where my department is set. And it's a great building, but those vents, as you can see along the back wall, are heating vents, and they're on all the time, no matter whether it's summer or winter or the temperature outside is 30 or 70. And so it's an example that really heating on our campus is something that generates a lot of emissions and is not particularly well designed. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew to chat a little bit more about what heating on our campus looks like.
Thanks. So when looking at the total emissions University of Oregon outputs, as kind of shown on this slide, it's meaningful to highlight the brown area shaded in the middle. The utilization of natural gas to power the heating infrastructure for our buildings around campus accounts for around 50% of our campus's total annual emissions. Currently, campus is heated using natural gas boilers at our central heating plant, wherein steam is generated and directed through around 4 miles of steam piping underneath the university. And so there's a necessity for us to switch to a system that aligns with the latest environmental standards that will propel us into the future. So I'm going to go through a couple options that we've been discussing. One that we've explored is, as an institution, is to move away from natural gas boilers and to rely on electric steam boilers instead. So this concept basically proposes using eWeb, which is our natural energy and water provider, using their low carbon electricity sources to power either a new 18 or 8 megawatt electrode boiler. And so while both of these boilers produce impressive projections for emissions reductions, they require the university to be reliant on a local grid. Fortunately, the local energy in our city is around 80% clean due to hydropower because we're sitting right on a river. But one might ask why we would consider the smaller boiler when the larger one has such, better emission reductions. There's a couple answers to this. Primarily, the fact that going with a larger boiler would be a significant investment into an outdated technology, whereas a smaller boiler would enable us to see immediate reductions while still, saving funding for a more substantial upgrade in the future, like within the next couple years. And then I'm going to go to the next one. And so on a different path, we've also been exploring a shift from steam-based to hot water-based, like a hot water-based heat distribution system around our campus. And this transition wouldn't only be about efficiency gains, but also about versatility in adopting future heating technologies with lower emissions. So specifically, we've explored, introducing a steam to hot water converter in a 1,000-ton heat recovery chiller at the outset, followed by an additional chiller in 2032. And so going with this option, we would reduce emissions by upwards of 50% by 2052, with the potential for these emissions to be reduced upwards of 61% in the same time frame if we were to integrate an alternative heat sink as well. And so going down this route, requires considerable upfront construction work, impacting major campus areas. But they promise, they would result in substantial long-term benefits in energy efficiency and cost savings. So something that we've been considering. I'm gonna go through a couple brief challenges that have been part of the conversation. The first one is the opportunity cost. Investing in greener energy comes with a high upfront cost that could limit other initiatives that the university is working towards at the same time. And so it's kind of a balancing act between environmental gains with the potential sacrifice of the other large projects on campus, like our Basic Needs Center and our Latinx Center. The second one that's worth highlighting would be the campus impact. And so the transition to a more substantial heating system would disrupt campus life for at least a decade if we were to go with some of the more aggressive options. And so it's weighting the gains of the environmental impact versus the experience of life on campus. The third one I want to highlight is resilience. Each option carries its own risks to the system's reliability, especially in emergencies. And so we have to assess the trade-offs between the heating system resilience while also achieving greenhouse gas targets. And then the last one that's worth highlighting is the tuition price risk. And so, a significant investment in sustainability, might lead to tuition hikes or budget cuts, affecting enrollment and program funding. And so a challenge here is to kind of align our environmental, goals with the financial well-being of students and the institution. And so as we deliberate, our focus kind of remains on balancing the immediate costs against the long-term sustainability and the resiliency of the university.
Thanks, Andrew. So as we close out here, we wanted to highlight a couple of the decision makers. Steve Maitel, you see on the left here, he's our director of sustainability at UO. He's one of the conveners of this task force. So he's been meeting with us throughout the course of the process. And in fact, he's the person that students 5 years ago, including myself, went to when we initially petitioned the university to make more change on climate. So he's really been a friend to the campus community advocating for change. And he and this task force is led officially by Jamie Moffat, you see in the middle, who's basically our CFO for our campus. And she sat in on these task force meetings, and she's really demonstrated her commitment to the results of this task force, including she was briefly appointed interim president, and she dropped every other task force she was on except for this one. And then lastly, our whole report is going to be delivered to our new university president, who was appointed this past fall, John Carl Scholes. And so he will be reviewing this recommendation and then delivering it to our board of trustees, which will vote on it in March. So this process is really about to come to a conclusion, and it's been very exciting to see all these folks involved. So, our vision here is, Andrew and I want to see a carbon-free campus at the University of Oregon, where our actions on climate match our words on climate. And in particular, we'd be excited about any of these options. It looks like our task force is going to recommend one of the electrolyte boilers, and we're very excited about the idea of cutting our carbon emissions by half by 2030 and really making progress towards carbon neutrality on our campus. Thanks so much.